Assalamu alaikum, everyone. A very warm welcome to another session of Ask Dr. Saleem. In this series, we take your questions, whether they're in Urdu or English, and ask them from Dr. Saleem. You may bring forth any questions that you have regarding Islam, Quran, Hadith, and so on. You can also type your questions in the chat if you haven't done so, or if you don't have a working mic. Otherwise, please raise your hand to ask questions, and they'll be asked in the order that they're received. And so, without any further ado, we'll get started. Our first written question asks, migration mustahib hai?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If referring to migration, I mean, migration is only something which is recommended, or and at times it becomes compulsory when you are not able to practice religion in the locality or the area that you're living in. For example, you are persecuted and you cannot carry out your basic religious responsibilities. This is the first condition. And the second condition is that you also have a place where you can migrate. I mean, to go to a place where you can really settle down and lead a life which is amenable to your faith is the second condition. So in this case, it's not just an absolute directive. Migration is related to circumstances, and these circumstances have been mentioned that unless there is persecution, religious persecution especially, that you are not able to carry out your basic religious duties. And obviously, if this is the case, then you would look for some other place. But then that place has to be available, viable for you to go there as well. So both these conditions need to be met.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next written question asks, when asked in one of the previous sessions, you said that the throne of God is metaphorical. And so the question is related to that. The question asks, this is a verse from the Quran that says, then he rose over stawa, the throne, in a manner that suits his majesty. What does in a manner that suits mean? Is arsh, or the throne, and kursi the same? If throne is metaphorical, then what about the verse in which we are told that angels will hold the throne on the day of judgment? Is there a physical throne?
So these are two different things. I mean, to ascend the throne in a glorious or in a majestic way, this relates to this world. And the throne of God that will be held or borne by 8 angels, that refers to the throne of God on the day of judgment. So these are two separate things. So as far as the glorious nature in which he will ascend the throne, it only refers to the majestic way in which he will rule this universe. And he is the person who is going to, or he's the being who has created, and he's not aloof from what happens there or from the circumstances. So not only did he create, but he is also governing it. So this is also referring to the fact that there has been this philosophy since ancient times that just God did create, but then he delegated all the affairs of this universe to his angels and to other deities so that they can run on his behalf, and he just became unconcerned and aloof. So this was a philosophy, an age-old philosophy. The Quran is actually refuting that philosophy, and the Quran is saying that not only did he create, but he is ever present. He is governing its affairs. Yes, the angels are deputed certain tasks, but this doesn't mean that he is absent. So he's very much there. He's gloriously and majestically governing this universe. As far as the throne of God is concerned, which is also mentioned in the question, but that, as I said, does not relate to this world. It says that يَحْمِلُ أَرْشَ رَبِّكَ فَوْقَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ ثَمَانِيَةٌ. This is a verse of the Quran which says that on the day of judgment, 8 angels will be carrying the throne of God. So that is something which relates to the land or the territory of the unseen or the time of the unseen. We cannot have any idea of that, but it doesn't relate to any governance or the fact that he is, still there on the throne. So whatever is going to happen in the hereafter, as we know from the Quran, is from amongst the matters of the mutashabihat, which means that we know that this is something that will happen on the day of judgment, but how it will happen, what exactly is the nature of God's throne, how he would be sitting on it, or whatever be the situation at that time, that needs to be seen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from Shabnam. Shabnam, please go ahead.
Thank you, Maria. Sir, मुझे ये पूछना था कि एक कॉमन ओपिनियन है, ट्रेडिशनल अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि इंसान अशरफुल मखलूकात है. Sir, गामदी साहब का व्यू इससे डिफरेंट है और वो कहते हैं कि फरिश्ते और जिन इंसान उनका जो मैटर ऑफ जिससे वो बनाए गए हैं वो बेहतर और डिफरेंट है और वो दोनों मखलूकात हमसे इंसानों से बेहतर है। सर काइंडली मुझे 1 मिनट दीजिएगा। सर मुझे ये बात लगती है कि एंजल्स तो किसी भी तरह हमें कंपेयर नहीं करना चाहिए बिकॉज दे आर नॉट पासिंग थ्रू द टफ टेस्ट कि हमें उन्हें जन्नत के लिए क्वालिफाई करना है और उनके अंदर फ्रॉम लिटिल टू नो टेंडेंसी है टू डिसओबे गॉड। तो वो तो इस रेस में बस अल्लाह ने उन्हें एक बनाया हुआ है, पायस एक मखलूक है। और दूसरा जो था अल्लाह ने जो क्वालिफाई करना था जन्नत के लिए उसमें रेस थी ह्यूमंस और जिन्स के दरमियान, तो अल्लाह ने इंसान को कैलिफ बनाया। सर मुझे कोई इशू नहीं है किसी के सुपीरियर या वो होने से, लेकिन मुझे अंडरस्टैंडिंग में थोड़ी मसला है, काइंडली इस पे कुछ गाइड कर दें। थैंक यू सर।
So first of all, I think we need to examine the term Ashraful Makhluqat. It is nowhere mentioned in the Quran or any authentic narrative. This is a concept that is alien to the Quran. So whether human beings are superior to other beings or not, that we shall discuss. I mean, this can be debated and discussed, but nowhere does the Quran say that human beings are the most superior of all his creations. This is a misconception. This is something which has become a cliche. People have just started to use this. Otherwise, the Quran actually says the words used by the Quran are فَضَّلْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ عَلَى كَثِيرًا مِّمَّنْ خَلَقَ. We have given superiority to human beings to a lot of other creations that I have created or that have been created by God. So the word kathir has been used, and it's not an absolute superiority that has been mentioned anywhere in the Quran. The Quran only says that we have given superiority to human beings over many other creatures. So it's just a general statement. So whether you regard the jinn to be superior or the angels to be superior, that is, I mean, one's own understanding. You can go with this or you can differ with it. But the whole substance of the matter is that the Quran nowhere claims this. There's not a single verse which claims that it is the human beings are absolutely superior. In fact, as I said, this verse, I think it's from Surah Bani Israel. It says that we have given superiority to the progeny of Adam over a lot of other creatures, not over all the other creatures.
Thank you. Our next written question asks, if we receive interest in a savings account from a bank at an interest rate in line with inflation, is that okay?
Yes, this is one of the interpretations of our modern scholars, and they think that if the interest they receive is less than the inflation rate, then it is absolutely fine, because as far as the money that you receive is concerned, you have the money has been depreciated because of inflation. So what you're doing is you're just adjusting inflation. And yeah, I would not disagree. I mean, personally, I would not do so, but I would not say that people who take interest because they would like to adjust inflation against it, I would not disagree that this is something that they do wrongly. So it's something that a person can do.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question is related to that one about the throne, and this one asks, what is the difference between arsh, throne, and kursi, and that which are physical and which are metaphorical other than the throne?
So the word throne is not used in the Quran. It is just a translation. The words which have been used by the Quran is either al-kursi and the other one is al-arsh. So wasi'a kursiyuhu samawati wal ard means that his rule extends over the heavens and the earth. The word kursi here is not used in the meaning of a chair. It's used metaphorically, just as we use the word the chair metaphorically for the chair which is occupied by the president or the chief or the head of whatever institution that we talk about. So in the Quran, wherever the word kursi is used, I think this is just one place where it is used in Surah Baqarah, where it says wasi'a kursiyus samawati wal ard. It just means that his rule extends over the heavens and the earth. It is not that physical chair that has been talked about. And similarly, the word throne is also symbolically used for God's power and majesty and governance. It's not used in any physical sense. So these are the only two words which have been used, and we use these linguistic expressions and words to connote power, especially power that relates to governance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I would also like to once again remind the participants that you may type your question in the chat or raise your hand to ask it yourself. And if you'd like to remain anonymous, you could send your question directly to me instead of to everyone. That way you could ask whatever questions you fancy. So up next, Dr. Ahmed, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab.
Walaikum salam.
Yeah, so basically my question, it's related to entertainment and stuff, like a lot of TV shows and games and stuff we have out there. A lot of them, they have like characters and stuff depicted as gods and all. And I mean, I read somewhere on like a different site that, because they kind of endorse polytheism and stuff, you shouldn't be indulging in this type of entertainment. But then the thing is like, the whole purpose of this thing is not to promote polytheism of these things. It's just entertainment value. So what's your opinion on this whole thing?
I think all such matters carry, both opinions can be adopted. People could think that, well, this is against the spirit of religion and anything as minor as entertainment. If you adopt it, it is just something that we show disrespect to the belief of monotheism. So this is one view that can be adopted. And another view could be that, yes, this is just pure entertainment, and all that you're doing is that you're trying to imitate how people think. It's not that what you think, it's not how people think, or people have written about it, or maybe they have enacted. So it's not that it's you who believe in such things. So I think both opinions have their own weightage, and one should just probably follow one's own conscience in this matter. I mean, there's nothing, there are things in which people can differ, and there are things that reinforce both opinions. So my take in such matters is that we should do what we think is right, and not negate or I would say condemn people who have the opposite opinion.
Oh, okay. So like, according to myself, like, the God we believe in, he doesn't like operate this way. And like, if you look at those so-called God characters, they're like just makhluk. And I think the whole essence of shirk is elevating the makhluk to the khaliq. So in that case, I mean, from an Islamic perspective, in my opinion, there is no like polytheism in that sense. So it should be.
As I said, it's a personal choice. It's your personal choice. You know what polytheism is, and if you're not promoting it in any way, and you think that you're providing entertainment, and this is not undermining the concept of monotheism in any way, I mean, it's a choice that you have to make and justify as well.
Okay, and so last part of my, so like, even if it is like polytheism, then just like watching it or anything doesn't like fall into the realm of shirk itself, right?
No.
Okay.
Certainly not. Because you see, it's not just polytheism that you're watching. I mean, look at the Quran; it is full of polytheism. If you talk about polytheism in that way, there's a lot of polytheism. Yes, a lot of criticism on polytheism as well. But you see, portraying polytheism in a book, or maybe in a play, or in any movie, it is basically depiction of the culture and customs and religious rituals of various societies and various peoples. So I think this is merely a depiction, and that in no way entails that you are part of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Muhammad Shaib, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. Thank you. Actually, I have just a follow-up question about the interest or profit given by banks. As you know, there are Islamic banks in certain European countries and in Pakistan as well. So what about the profit given by Islamic banks who declare that they have a Sharia board which makes sure that the business of bank runs according to the principles of Islam? And as you know that, the profit given by Islamic banks is more than the inflation rate anyway. So kindly comment on this, please. Thank you.
So I think it's a matter of the trust that you have on Islamic banking. I mean, not everyone is required to go and do their research. It's trusting people who say that they are giving you whatever they're giving you in compliance with the Sharia, and you can trust them and just go ahead and have that profit. And on the other hand, there could be people who have maybe researched into the whole business that they say, or they claim that this is interest free and they're not giving you interest, it's basically profit. So there could be people who do their research and end up saying that, well, this is dubious. What you say is, I mean, it's just a different name for interest, and what you're giving you is what they're giving you is actually interest. So it depends on the extent of knowledge that you have and how much you can go how far you can go as far as trusting a bank is concerned. So there could be simple and ordinary people who say, well, okay, I don't have the time or maybe the wherewithal to go and find out whether they're lying or not. I would just trust them, and I think this is perfectly fine as well. But there could be people who are like scholarly people, and they think that because they have been asked an opinion, so they'll go deeper down and find out whether what they claim is also what exactly is the situation. So it depends where you place yourself. If you are a person who simply would like to trust what they say, I think that is something that is also has its own, possibility. You can, just trust them and go ahead. And anything which is wrong would then be, they would be held liable for that because you are trusting them and you've made your choice. But as I said, there could be academicians or scholars who might not agree, and you could also ask them in this regard if in their opinion this is whatever they say is profit, whether it's really profit or it's interest, and you can trust them as well. So it depends how you take the whole issue. I would leave the choice to the person who's going to make that decision, and I'm just giving you the various options that he has.
You might know that most of the Islamic banks have uploaded some documents, or you can say fatwa by different, well-known scholars as well about it. So, if you don't mind, I don't have much knowledge, but in your opinion, what is your own feeling about it?
My own opinion about as I said, in the last couple of years, a lot of work has been done, and I would not like to comment on in general. I can comment on more specific. If you talk to me about a particular bank and how they present their instruments, they have a whole brochure that tells you what they do. So, because different banks are doing different things. But a couple of years ago, when I was more in touch with this, I was not fully satisfied with the claim that they had made, and I rather thought that whatever they are presenting is basically interest. All that they are doing is just changing the name of interest to profit. I think that this is something that has to. I personally still am not very convinced, and what I think is that it's just a question of the terminology being changed. The essence is still the same, but as I said, things have been improving in the last couple of years, and banks have been alert to this question also, because this is the criticism that they have been facing. So maybe some particular banks have come up with some more different instruments of investment. So as I said, this is just a general comment that I can make, but for a specific comment, I would need to see which particular bank you're referring to and what they actually claim and how I'm able to make sense of that claim.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe in next session I will ask about the further. Particularly, you might have lived in UK as well. There's a Islamic Bank, Al Rayan Bank, and in Pakistan, Bank Islami, etc. So maybe
there are several banks, not just Al Rayan. There are other banks.
Yeah.
They claim the CC. This is what they say and what they claim. The thing is that what exactly is the essence of what they say? Are they really true to that essence, or is it something that they are trying to just justify?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Shabnam, you're up next. Please go ahead.
थैंक यू सर, मुझे ये पूछना था कुछ अर्सा पहले एक और पार्टिसिपेंट ने भी ऐसा ही क्वेश्चन किया था सर कि जब हम होली कुरान पढ़ते हैं तो अगरचे कि वो बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम से शुरू होता है, लेकिन ओवरऑल लुक में यही फील होता है कि अल्लाह मियां हमें बहुत डरा रहे हैं छोटी छोटी सी बात पे. और सर ऑनेस्टली ऑल माय लाइफ मुझे ये फीलिंग रही, एंड इट टुक मी इयर्स एंड इयर्स कि मैं डेप्थ में जब मैंने स्टडी बहुत हुई है तो मुझे रियलाइज हुआ हाउ मर्सीफुल अल्लाह इज. तो सर आपने ये रिस्पॉन्ड किया था कि ये फर्स्ट एड्रेसेस थे. सर अल्लाह न्यू के वो ये ऑल टाइम्स के लिए प्रिजर्व कर रहा है उस कुरान को, और ऐसे, और आजकल के हमारी नई जनरेशन बहुत पुट ऑफ होती है इन चीजों से. तो सर काइंडली इस पे थोड़ा सा गाइड कर
So
दें.
yes,
Thank
this
you,
is a
sir.
very, very important question. And I think, as I explained, I think earlier on, if you know the theme of the Quran, if you know how it addresses people, you will understand that a bulk of guidance which we have from God is within us. So 80% of guidance needed for success relates to your moral being, and that you already have inside of yourself. So the remaining part in which you have to connect to God, you have to offer certain worship rituals, etc. They are the ones which have been divinely ordained either through the Quran or through the Sunnah. So I would say that a better part of the guidance is already with us. And even for that guidance, what the Quran does is it does not give you new guidance. It reminds you of what you already know. And the part in which it gives you new guidance, as I said, is not that much. So first of all, we need to introduce the Quran properly to ourselves and to our younger generation, that as far as the Quran is concerned, it is a book of God revealed in a particular situation to a specific audience, and for them, they were people to whom a messenger was sent, and the whole process of judgment, which generally spans centuries. Look at us. We in the post-prophetic era, we have gone through so many centuries, and the day of judgment is still to arrive. So what happens is that in the times of God's messengers, he condenses this time from centuries into, let's say, about 30 to 40 years, in which the truth is unfolded in such a exemplary way, in such a conclusive way, that the adversaries have no excuse left to deny it. And if they still are bent to deny, they are bent upon denying it, then the Almighty punishes them in this world, just as He's going to do them, just as He's going to punish them in the hereafter. So you see, it's just a rehearsal of what's going to take place in the hereafter in this world in times of God's messengers. So because this is depicted a lot of times in the Quran, the previous nations like the Ad, the Thamud, the people of Lot, the people of Noah, the people of Shuaib, etc., all of them, they were the people who occupied a better part of the Quran's content, and the Arabs of the times of the Prophet knew their stories very well. So they had to be reminded of those stories and told that, look, how they were held accountable in this world, and if you do not mend your ways, your fate is also at hand. So if you're able to make sense to your younger generation that the bulk of that guidance is within you, the remaining part is either reminded by the Quran or it is given to you afresh. So, and that is all that you would need to know. Other than that, you'll find the Quran reminding people of the arguments in favor of Tawheed, arguments in favor of the hereafter, arguments in favor of the fact they were prophets of God, arguments in favor of the fact that the Quran is an authentic book of God. So this is something that you have to look for. And even more than that, you have to view it as the story of the last prophet of God, the way he administered his preaching mission in the land of Arabia. So if the mindset, you see, what happens is the mindset that we have or we are communicated by our parents is like a book, which is a universal book. It has everything in it. And when you read the book, you will find guidance for everything. This is a wrong introduction of the Quran. It has to be amended that a bulk of that guidance we already have. So the Quran either reminds us of that guidance or yes, it gives us fresh guidance, but that is very small in quantity. A bulk of the Quran consists of how people will be held accountable in the hereafter, just as they were in this world. So it's basically a constant reminder of the hereafter that the Quran is serving. So you see, if you understand the point that the Quran is making to people is that you should not forget your accountability. So that is a single point theme of the Quran, that accountability is the thing that we tend to forget. And in order to keep that afresh, we are constantly narrated the stories of the past nations and told that, look how they deviated and how they got punished. So basically, it's that single point agenda of reminding us of that accountability that's going to take place in the hereafter. So if you're able to introduce the Quran in this way to our young minds, I think they will read it in the proper perspective. They will not expect what is generally what is generally inculcated in them that they should expect from the Quran. It's not a universal book. It's not a book the way we have been introduced to it that has solutions to all our problems. It's like a way of life. This is I would say, an erroneous notion, and has arisen by not realizing that, as I said, a bulk of the guidance, the Quran says, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. The knowledge of good and evil is already ordained in us. We know what morality is. We know how to deal with people. We fall short, for example, in how to connect with God. There are certain things that only God would have told us. Similarly, in certain dealings, for example, how should we deal with our fellow brethren in the social sphere, in the economic sphere, in the political sphere, in the penal sphere. So these were areas which needed some guidance, and that has been provided very well by the Quran.
Our next question comes from Iqra Bashir. Iqra Bashir, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. So my question is regarding planning education for children, especially the children who are living in Western countries and don't have any access to Islamic centers, and we are parents only responsible for planning those things for them. So I want to know, how can I set the goals with respect to their age brackets? Like, for example, if I can know, like, by end of this year, this child should have known at least these basic things, so I can know, like, I'm not going over speed and low speed. So according to their mind, and
right.
like,
So Al Mawrid US, as I know, under the auspices of Al Mawrid US, we are running an institute called GCIL, which is the Ghamidi Institute of Islamic Learning, or the Ghamidi Center of Islamic Learning. So at GCIL, we have a Sunday school, which is a weekly school, and we have ages 7 to 17, 10 or 11 years covered in that. And we have a specific syllabus laid out for each year. And it is basically geared towards their grooming. So maybe you can get in touch with our education department, and you'll be guided there. And at the same time, if it is feasible, because all these sessions are online and they are just 1 hour a week. So just 1 hour in 1 week, either on a Saturday or on Sunday. And by the way, we just began 2 weeks ago. So in case you would like your children to join, I mean, they may be able to join if the department allows, or other than that, you'll be given some guidance. So you can look up our website.
Yeah, and what about the children under 7?
So below 7, I think that this is something which is a rather bigger challenge, because young boys and girls, they need to, I think the best education that you can give them is that you become a role model of the ideals that you think that they should follow. And in this matter, you can broadly read out to them some of the important passages of the Quran, just the translation. And for that, we have compiled books like selections from the Quran. We have selections from the Hadith. So these are the books from which you can just read out the translation of Hadith literature, of the Quran literature. Also, we have a book called Selections from the Bible, in which Bible verses which are in accordance with the Quran are also selected. So these are verses which mostly relate to personality development and personality upkeep. So they are meant to connect you. And obviously, the other thing that you can do is teach them the meaning of the prayer or the namaz that they would be offering. Similarly, teach them the meaning of Surah Fatiha, which is something that they offer every day, they read every day. So some thing that you can do in bits and pieces, and other than that, become a role model yourself, so that they can follow you before they join school.
Thank you. And the another related part was that if I want to know the top universities providing the best Islamic education and the relevant programs, so how can I look upon that thing?
So this is very easy. I mean, when the time comes, if your children are presumably very, they're not that old, but when they enter mature age, when they are going to go to the university, so there are a lot of options that you can just know from the internet. So all that you need to do is do a little, just a little research, because every university has a different program, and by the time your children would reach that age in which you need to find out, things would have changed a lot. So unless you have someone that you would like to admit today, for which, as I said, the best thing would be to do a quick internet research on that. Other than that, you just need to wait, because, as I said, things just keep coming up and they get developed. And once they are in that age, I'm sure that will be very easy for them, because many schools, they already have these programs in which they groom the children, they provide them career counseling, and they already tell them, well before they graduate, that these are the options that they have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Noshad Shafqa. Please go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Question about Surah Taha. It is mentioned that when God asked Moses to go to Pharaoh, and he asked him to clear my tongue and open my heart so that I can. He asked for help of his brother Harun,
Mhm.
and that was immediately granted. But in the entire episode of Moses being before Pharaoh, even in Surah Mu'min, and there is no mention of Harun at all. What would you think to be the reason for that? Because he asked specifically to strengthen my back, to give me a good support and all. But then when the time came, Harun is not even mentioned. Right?
So, Noshad Sahab, this is a very interesting question. I never thought about it. You're absolutely right that the Almighty was asked for the help by Moses of his brother. And the reason that he had asked him was that he's not a huge sermonizer or not someone who is a good orator. So he said that I would like some orator with me, someone who can really speak well and impress the audience. And the Almighty immediately granted his wish. But yes, throughout the Quran, you don't find Aaron in any way addressing people the way Moses might have thought. So this is a good food for thought that you have given me. Let me think about this question. And I think it's a very, very pertinent and interesting question. And maybe we need to have recourse to the Old Testament also, because I think there are passages in which, if I remember faintly, although not in the Quran, I think there are passages there in which he has spoken. And although he has been framed very badly by the translators of the Torah as the person who was responsible for the polytheism that was committed by the Israelites in the absence of Moses when they started to worship the calf. So the Torah actually ascribes this whole sin to Aaron and says that it was he who initiated this whole thing, and makes him culpable. So other than that, of course, this is something which is entirely wrong, but I do think that there are some passages, but I need to check again. But this is absolutely, a pertinent question. And to my knowledge, there is not a single passage in the Quran, I think, as you said, which in any way says that Aaron did address the Israelites, or maybe he had an effect on them. So I would like to consult the Old Testament and see, and I'll come back to you on this.
Thank you, Dr. Sahab. I'll do that myself too. And anything I get, I will pass on to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Saqib Khan, you're up next.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
सर मेरा सवाल उर्दू में है और जवाब भी अगर मुमकिन हो तो उर्दू में दीजिएगा, क्योंकि अंग्रेजी मुझे उस तरह से समझ नहीं आती। सवाल ये है कि मेरा जो एक शख्स नबूवत का झूठा दावा करता है जबकि उसे किसी किस्म का कोई नफ्सियाती या ज़हनी इख्तलाल भी नहीं है या बीमारी भी नहीं है और जिंदगी के बाकी तमाम मामलात में भी वो बिल्कुल ठीक चल रहा होता है, तो क्या ऐसे शख्स को हम मुतय्यन तौर पर काफिर कह सकते हैं? क्योंकि उसके झूठा होने के लिए मेरी नाकिस राय की हद तक यही है कि कुरान इस बारे में बहुत वाज़े है और अहदीस रसूल भी बहुत वाज़े हैं कि आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के बाद कोई नबी नहीं आएगा। तो इस सतह पर आके जब कोई शख्स झूठ बोलता है और नबूवत का झूठा दावा करता है, तो फिर हम उसे काफिर क्यों नहीं कह सकते? इस सिलसिले में जरा आपकी रहनुमाई दरकार है सर।
तो पहली बात तो ये देखें कि काफिर कहने का या किसी की तकफीर करने का हक अल्लाह ताला ने अपने अलावा किसी को नहीं दिया। वो कहते हैं कि किसी की तकफीर मैं ही कर सकता हूं, क्योंकि मैं ही जानता हूं कि एक शख्स जानते बूझते ये काम कर रहा है। जानते बूझते का मामला दिल की कैफियत से, और हम दिलों का हाल नहीं जानते। तो अल्लाह ताला ये कहते हैं कि ये तकफीर जो है ये सिर्फ मुझे इसका हक था, मैं इस हक को मैंने इस्तेमाल किया पैगंबरों के दौर में जब मेरे रसूल आए, उसके बाद ये हक मैंने वापस ले लिया। इस तो तन्हा यही बात काफ़ी है कि ये हक हमें दिया नहीं गया। और इसका आप ये सवाल पूछ सकते हैं कि क्यों नहीं दिया गया, तो उसकी वजह वही है कि यानी तकफीर का मामला ऐसा है कि जिसमें जब तक वो सब चीज़ें जो कि एक इंसान के अंदरून से गुजर रही हैं वाकिफ ना हो, آپ اس کو کچھ کوئی ورڈکٹ نہیں دے سکتے. اگر ایک نفسیاتی معاملہ نہیں بھی ہے, کوئی ذہنی اختلال نہیں بھی ہے, تو ایک اگلی چیز تو ہو سکتی ہے نا, وہ دلائل ہیں. ایک آدمی جو ہے وہ دلیل سے ہی کہہ رہا ہے کہ دیکھیں قرآن کی اس آیت کا مطلب یہ ہے, آپ لوگوں کا مطلب اور سمجھ رہے ہیں, میرے ذہن میں اس کا مطلب اور آ رہا ہے, اور ختم نبوت کا مطلب یہ نہیں بلکہ یہ ہے, اور حدیثوں میں جو یہ بات بیان ہوئی ہے وہ یہ نہیں وہ یہ ہے, تو وہ تعویل کر رہا ہے. یہاں وہ کوئی ہٹ دھرمی پہ نہیں کھڑا ہوا یا کسی انکار پہ نہیں کھڑا ہوا, وہ تعویل کر رہا ہے. ابھی تک کوئی ایسا آدمی نہیں پیدا ہوا کہ جو یا نفسیاتی مریض نہ ہو اور یا پھر وہ تعویل نہ کر رہا ہو. اس کے علاوہ تو کوئی تیسری کیٹیگری ہو نہیں سکتی. یعنی اگر وہ ہوگی تو ظاہر ہے اس کے بارے میں بھی ہمیں توقف کرنا پڑے گا, کیونکہ یہ حق ہمیں خدا نے دیا نہیں ہے. خاص طور سے ان لوگوں کے بارے میں ضرور ذہن میں رکھیے کہ جو اگر ختم نبوت کے عقیدے کے بارے میں کوئی دوسری رائے رکھتے ہیں, وہ کہتے ہیں دیکھیے ہماری رائے یہ ہے کہ اس آیت کا مطلب یہ نہیں بلکہ یہ ہے, تو اب ہم ان سے اختلاف کریں گے, ان کو کہیں گے کہ دیکھیے آپ کی بات کے اندر یہ سکم پایا جاتا ہے, یہ ڈیبیٹ اور ڈسکشن ہوگی, یہ فیصلہ خداوند تعالیٰ ہی کریں گے. اگر وہ چاہیں گے, انہوں نے یہ فیصلہ کیا دنیا میں جب ان کے رسول آئے, آج اس فیصلے کو انہوں نے مؤخر کر دیا ہے, رسول اب نہیں آتے, وہ ہم سے کمیونیکیٹ نہیں کرتے اللہ تعالیٰ براہ راست, اس وجہ سے ہم نہیں جان سکتے, اور یہ حق ہمیں دیا ہی نہیں گیا. تو اصل بات تو وہی ہے کہ حق ہمیں ہے نہیں.
سر اصل میں میں اس لیے پوچھ رہا تھا کہ یوٹیوب پہ سوشل میڈیا پہ کافی خواہ مخواہ کوئی شخص سامنے آتا ہے اور وہ نبوت کا جھوٹا دعویٰ کر دیتا ہے. بلکہ پچھلے دنوں تو میں دیکھ رہا تھا کہ ایک عورت نے بھی شاید نبوت کا جھوٹا دعویٰ کیا ہے. تو اس سینس میں بات کر رہا تھا کہ ایسے لوگوں کو کیسے ٹیکل کیا جائے. پھر
اگنور کر دینا چاہیے جی, بلکہ نظر انداز کر دیں, اپنا معاملہ ان کا سپورٹ کریں خدا کے, خدا ان کو دیکھ لے گا. ہمیں اس میں کیا کچھ ادا کرنا ہے. آپ اگر موقع ہے کہ اللہ تعالیٰ کے رسول نے نہیں آنا, وہ آخری رسول تھے جو چلے گئے, تو یہ آپ اس پہ ڈٹے رہیں اپنے عقیدے پہ. کوئی اگر یہ اس طرح کی بات کرتا ہے, یا تو دیکھیے نا اس سے کوئی آپ کے کوئی تعلق ہو, آپ اس سے کچھ سمجھ سکیں, سمجھا سکیں, سب نے سمجھانے کی کوئی مجلس ہو. ایسا تو نہیں ہوتا, انٹرنیٹ پہ تو بہت ساری خبریں فیک بھی ہوتی ہیں, جو درست ہوتی ہیں وہ بندے آپ کے ایکسیس میں نہیں ہوتے. تو بہتر تو یہ ہوتا ہے کہ اس طرح کی چیزوں کو نظر انداز کر دیا جائے.
کنفیوژن سر یہ تھی کہ جب ہم یعنی کہ مائنر پریمیسز یا میجر پریمیسز قائم کر لیتے ہیں صغرا اور کبرا, تو پھر ہم کنکلوژن کی طرف کیوں نہیں جاتے, نتیجے کی طرف جاتے وقت ہم کیوں چپ ہو جاتے ہیں؟ جبکہ
نہیں دیکھیں, یہاں تو ہم چپ نہیں ہوئے, یہاں تو خدا نے اختیار نہیں ہمیں دیا نا. جہاں اختیار ہے وہاں تو ہم چپ نہیں ہوں گے. صغرا کبرا ہم قائم کریں گے, نتیجہ بھی نکالیں گے, نتیجے کو کمیونیکیٹ بھی کریں گے, لیکن جب اختیار نہیں دیا اللہ میاں نے, وہاں آپ کے پاس نہ صغرا ہے نہ کبرا ہے. تو خدا آپ کو یہی کہہ رہے ہیں کہ ختم جو تکفیر کے معاملے میں صغرا کبرا آپ قائم ہی نہیں کر سکتے, کیونکہ صغرا اور کبرا انسان کی دل کی کیفیت سے یہاں پہ پھوٹتا ہے کہ وہ اصل میں کس جگہ پہ کھڑا ہوا ہے. اور خدا کہتے ہیں کہ وہ میں ہی کر سکتا ہوں, اور وہ میں بھی تب کرتا ہوں کہ جب میں رسول کے ذریعے سے اتمام حجت کر لیتا ہوں. یعنی تنہا یہی کافی نہیں ہے کہ کسی کی غلطی یا گمراہی پتہ چل جائے, اس سے آگے بڑھ کے اللہ یہ کہتے ہیں کہ وہ جب مجھے میرے سامنے آ جاتی ہے تو پھر میں اپنے رسول کے ذریعے سے اس سے واضح بھی کرتا ہوں کہ دیکھو یہ آپ غلطی کر رہے ہیں. اب بھی اگر وہ ڈٹ جاتا ہے کہ نہیں میں نے نہیں ماننا, پھر خدا کہتے ہیں کہ میں ان کو تکفیر کرتا ہوں. تو خدا کا معاملہ تو بہت مختلف ہے کہ وہ غلطی کو بھی دیکھتے ہیں, اور غلطی کے بعد وہ کہتے ہیں تنہائی کافی نہیں ہے, اس کے بعد اس رسول کے ذریعے سے میں اس کی اصلاح کرتا ہوں, اور اس ہر درجے میں اصلاح کرتا ہوں کہ وہ خود گواہ ہوتا ہے کہ بھئی ہاں میں بات سمجھ گیا ہوں. قرآن نے جگہ جگہ کہا ہے کہ من بعد ما عرفوا کفروا من بعد عرفوا, انہوں نے انکار کیا, کفر کا ارتکاب کیا ہے جانتے بوجھتے. وہ سمجھ گئے تھے پھر بھی, تو یہ جانتے بوجھتے انکار اللہ تعالیٰ کہتے ہیں انسان نہیں جان سکتے. انسانوں کا تو معاملہ وہ ہے جو آپ کو پتا ہے, جو مشہور روایت ہے جس میں ایک صحابی نے ایک دشمن کا سر قلم کر دیا تھا جبکہ اس نے لا الہ پڑھ لیا تھا. تو جب یہ خبر نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کو پہنچی تو آپ بہت ناراض ہوئے. تو آپ نے کہا کہ حل شککت عن قلبک, ان قلبہ ہی, کیا تم نے اس کا دل چیر لیا تھا؟ یعنی اس نے تو یہ کہا تھا نا کہ اس نے کلمہ پڑھا ہے اپنی جان بچانے کے لیے. تو آپ پیغمبر نے یہ کہا کہ دیکھو 1% بھی تو چانس ہو سکتا ہے کہ اس نے حقیقی طور پہ پڑھا ہو, تم دل میں تو اتر کے نہیں چلے گئے تھے کہ جان لو کہ اس نے دل سے کیا یا نہیں کیا. تو دل کا معاملہ ہوتا ہے یہ اصل میں کہ انسان اندر سے کیسا ہے. تو خدا کہتے ہیں وہ معاملہ میں ہی جانتا ہوں, میرا پیغمبر بھی نہیں جانتا. تو یہ اس درجے کی چیز ہے جس کو ہمیں سمجھنا چاہیے. چونکہ ہم عام طور سے اس سے واقف نہیں ہوتے تو ہم بڑی آسانی کے ساتھ دوسرے آدمی کو کافر قرار دے دیتے ہیں. تو یہ حق ہمیں دیا نہیں گیا. خدا کہتا ہے یہ میرا رائٹ ہے کیونکہ اس کے بارے میں ڈیٹا میں ہی جان سکتا ہوں, انسانی طور پہ ڈیٹا اویلیبل ہی نہیں ہے اس کے لیے.
یہ ماشاءاللہ سر بہت زبردست طریقے سے آپ نے, یقین کیجئے کہ ایک طرح سے کنفیوژن جو کافی عرصے سے میرے ذہن میں تھی وہ کافی حد تک میری دور ہوئی ہے. اللہ تعالیٰ جزائے خیر عطا فرمائے. مزید کوئی کنفیوژن ہوئی تو میں سوال انشاءاللہ کروں گا سر پھر آپ سے.
ضرور.
Thank you very much. Our next question is a chat question that asks, what is the reality of mubahala, where Prophet took his daughter and her sons to mubahala with Christians. Are Ahlul Bayt daughter of wives?
Ahlul Bayt just refer to the wives, not the daughters, but the mubahala which is mentioned in the Quran, it says, فَقُلْ تَعَالُوا نَدْعُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ. It says that, well, this is what, if you still reject the Almighty, then let us bring our women and your women, nisa'ana wa nisa'akum wa anfusana wa anfusakum, ourselves and yourselves, and then just we say, let the curse of God be on those who are lying. So this is what is mentioned in the Quran. Whether it actually took place or not, I mean, it's all history, and there are not very certain accounts whether this took place or not. And in all probability, it didn't take place. So this is just a threat which is mentioned in the Quran, that if this is what they are doing, then let us proceed and indulge in this mubahala.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Asif Ali, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. सर मैं अपना सवाल उर्दू में पूछता हूँ, आप बेशक उसका जवाब अंग्रेजी में दे दीजिएगा। अहले सुन्नत जमात या जो ट्रेडिशनल जो जितनी भी मुसलमानों के फिरके या जमातें हैं, उनका ये एक दीन का जो माखज है उसके बारे में एक चीज है कि जी के कुरान, सुन्नत, इजमा और कियास। तो ये जब हदीस यानी हिस्टोरिकल रिपोर्ट्स या हदीस की बात होती है, तो सुन्नत और हदीस में बहुत सारे जो उलमा हैं वो कुछ ज्यादा फर्क नहीं करते, या जमातें कुछ ज्यादा फर्क नहीं करते, जैसे अहले हदीस जमात है या और बहुत सारी ऐसी हैं। तो ये जो नतीजा हम निकलता है कि जी माखज दीन का रसूल अल्लाह, तन्हा माखज रसूल अल्लाह की जात है। तो अगर इसको हम ये बदलें कि तन्हा माखज तो रसूल अल्लाह का जो रोल है, यानी उनका जो किरदार है वो मैसेंजर का है, ना कि माखज का है, तो डेफिनेटली इसमें हम फिर कुरान की तरफ आएंगे, और कुरान में आपको पता है कि फिर वो एक सोर्स बन जाएगा, और हदीस और उससे रिलेटेड जितने भी इख्तलाफात हैं और जो दीन निकाला जाता है हदीसों से या हिस्टोरिकल रिपोर्ट से, उसका भी काफी हद तक मतलब उसमें कमी आ जाएगी। तो इसके बारे में आपका क्या ख्याल है कि
what you are referring to a change in terminology, if I understand correctly?
मतलब चेंज इन टर्मिनोलॉजी, मतलब हम तन्हा जो दीन का माखज है वो अगर कुरान को समझें बजाय रसूल अल्लाह की जात के, क्योंकि हदीस में तो हमें कोई नया दीन तो नहीं आ रहा, तो सुन्नत जो तो सिर्फ प्रैक्टिसेस हैं जो ठीक है वो, तो फिर उसको हम किस जगह पर रखेंगे? तो मतलब मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि टर्मिनोलॉजी।
I understand. So you see, I mean, we have to understand that the Quran was not given to us directly. We are not the recipients of the Quran. So if there is to be a source, it should be, I mean, the source from where we have received this guidance. So the Quran itself has been given to us by the Almighty, by the Prophet himself. So the Almighty has given the Quran to us through the Prophet himself. So the person of the Prophet cannot be subtracted from this definition. Yes, he could have been subtracted had the Quran been revealed directly on earth and they were in a book placed in front of us. We could have said that, well, this is now the source of religion because this is how God has sent it down. This the Almighty did not do. So he sent a person, a human being, he gave him guidance, and the guidance was of two categories. One related to certain words which formalize in the form of scripture. The other related to certain practices which formalize in the form of the sunnah. So you see, without the sunnah being present, you just couldn't have the practices. So it's not just the Quran that we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that the Almighty actually wanted certain practices, which was besides the words, which actually through which formal scriptures are given. So if that would be the case, then we would have to hunt or look for a personality, because practices cannot be revealed. I mean, practices cannot be sent down. There has to be some person who portrays those practices. So that is why we have to go back to the origin, and that is, where did we receive those practices and where did we receive those oral words? So we know that there was a person called Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a particular period of time, and it was through him that these two original sources were given. The confusion has been arisen because of not understanding some of the allied parts, and that is when the Prophet was asked certain questions about these two sources, or maybe asked how he would interpret certain verses of the Quran, or maybe how he would follow certain parts of religion. So that is a perspective that we have to understand, that the Quran and the Sunnah was divinely revealed, and then the Prophet acted upon that Sunnah and the Quran as well, or followed that Quran and Sunnah. And through that practical example, he answered certain questions, he raised certain questions, he commented. And through that, when people thought that, well, they are getting a wealth of information and it became a historical record, so people said, well, this is what we have heard from the Prophet. These are his conversations. So we are just saving those conversations. So if you place things in their right perspective, I don't think this confusion results. The only thing is that because we don't place things in their right perspective and we mix up all things, that is why this confusion has arisen. Otherwise, you see, if the hadith had been something of divine origin, then the Prophet was bound. He was bound. It was an obligation on him to gather everyone and tell them that, well, whatever I speak to you today or tomorrow in my private gatherings, each one of you is responsible to transmit it to other people. This he never did. It was basically an effort made by the Sahaba. They thought that they had heard good conversations, they had heard a lot of wisdom, pearls of wisdom, in fact, and so why not share them with others? So this was an exercise which was, I can say that the origin of this exercise rests with the Sahaba, whereas the origin of the Quran and Sunnah rests with the Prophet Muhammad and ultimately with God. So for those two sources, everyone was liable to have been communicated those two sources. But for the rest, it was just as I said, sharing of knowledge of the Prophet. But ultimately, later on, people mixed up the two and they started to think that whatever the Prophet has spoken of is also equally, equal in status, at least, as you have said. Some groups too, they go as far as equating it to the Quran. And this is just a misconception that has arisen by not placing these sources in their proper perspectives.
तो सुन्नत में सर सिर्फ प्रैक्टिसेस हैं और हदीस में सुन्नत, तो फिर इसका मतलब है कि कुरान के अलावा भी एक हमारे पास माखज़ है और वो सुन्नत है। लेकिन जो हदीस है उसमें भी जब सवाल पूछा जा रहा है रसूल अल्लाह से और वो उसका जवाब दे रहे हैं, तो वो भी तो असूल का इतलाक है, तो वो प्रैक्टिसेस नहीं है।
So you see, practices means that you are transmitting it by following them. For example, one example of the practice is the prayer or the fast. You are observing the prayer, you're offering the prayer, you are observing the fast, you are doing the Hajj. So when we look upon practices, they actually refer to things that we do practically. So when we pray 5 times a day, we are doing something practically. So as far as the hadith is concerned, it is a record of the Sunnah. It at times just gives you a record that this is how the Prophet did something. It doesn't give you any practice in itself, because practice means that someone is going to perform it, someone is going to offer it. So it cannot be a book that's going to offer something. It cannot be a writing that's going to observe something. It has to be a living person who observes or does something. So Sunnah is something that is always related to some living person, because it cannot be done by a non-living being. It is something that has to be performed, something that has to be offered.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Since we're running out of time for this session, we only have another 12 minutes remaining. I'd request the remaining participants to keep their questions concise. Rafia Khwaja, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Dr. Shehzad. Dr. Shehzad, मेरा सवाल ये है कि कई दफा जब मैं सुबह उठती हूँ फजर के लिए, तो जरा देर हो जाती है. So when I look at the time, sometimes I find कि 3 मिनट रह गए या 4 मिनट रह गए, and I'm not very sure कि उस वक्त can I say the Fajr prayers or should I wait till the sun rises? So this has happened even today. There were only 3 minutes left.
I understand. So when you are sure that you can offer the first rakat before the sun rises, you can go ahead. If the first rakat can be offered before the sunrise, if this next rakat falls during the time of sunrise, it is fine. And also, I would like to communicate this fact that most calculations that have been done today and they are circulating, they are not very accurate, and they were made 100 years ago in many parts, especially if I can talk about the subcontinent. So a lot of prayer timings, if you're talking about a subcontinent, are exactly not the same as the sun. The sun has, in 100 years, the rotation of the earth and some of the other things have changed. But if you're living in some other part of the world, then yes, you just follow the charts that you can find on your internet. And in that case, if you're able to calculate that you can offer the first rakat within those 3 minutes, then it is fine.
I see. तो जैसे आज मैंने दोनों रकत 3 मिनट में तो मैंने जरा जल्दी में पढ़ ली तो that is
So
okay.
that is fine. That is fine.
Yeah, I see. It has to be within that time.
Within the time, the first rakat, just the first rakat. Even if you are able to relegate the second rakat in the time when the sun is rising, that is fine. As long as you are able to get one rakat before sunrise.
Because I don't put an alarm और मेरे साथ ये बहुत दफा हो रहा है, so at least I am able to say it.
Right. So my suggestion would be that you start using the alarm and set up 3 or 4 alarms.
Thank you very much. Athar Zubairi, you're up next. Please go ahead.
My question is related to a specific word of the Quran, ja'ala. If we look at the pan-textual analysis of this word used in the Quran in multiple occasions, the word ja'ala is used for making skies, universe, earth, human beings. Now, in another verse, Allah says that ja'ala fil Kaaba. So when I read this verse, I thought that if the word ja'ala used for other creations and Allah is using the word ja'ala for Kaaba also, therefore this house of Allah is exclusively made by Allah Ta'ala. Why we are believing that this house of Allah was made by human beings or Prophet Ibrahim and others?
So there
Please
is,
clarify.
just let me clarify this, that there is not a single verse which says Ja'ala al-Kaaba. There is no such verse. If you can point out the exact words, I can maybe comment on that. There is no such verse which says Ja'ala al-Kaaba.
There is.
Okay, please point it out.
Actually, I pointed out, I think it's in Surah, don't recall that, but the word Ja'ala categorically is used for the Kaaba as well, apart from the universe, earth,
As I said, you see, you have to point out the words, because you see the word Ja'ala is also a failul naqis, which is what we call the incomplete verb, where it doesn't mean to make something. It means to start something, to begin something. So it depends with the usage, and it doesn't have just one meaning, it has several meanings. So I need to look at the exact verse. If you can send me the words, or maybe the verse, or maybe, communicate it to our moderator, or you can have my number.
Okay.
I can only comment on that after I look at the verse.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question comes from Riaz. Riaz, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahab.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Dr. Sahab, the nafs, the word has been used, and some scholars, they have translated it as a psyche and self. But on the other hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says that I take the nafs during the sleep. So does it have any relationship with the physical entity, or the nafs itself is not a physical thing?
On most occasions, it is referring to the soul. The soul that we have. You see, we are a compound entity. We have a physical being and we have a soul inside of us. So when the Quran says, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, or similarly when it says that جَعَلَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. So at times the word nafs is used for that physical entity that we are in relation to being human beings, and at times it is used for our soul. So it depends on the usage and the verse that you're referring to. It's not. It's not always referring to your own spirit or to your own soul. At times, as we saw in our last study, it says "Faqtulu anfusakum," which means that kill yourselves. So the anfus is the plural of nafs, and nafs here is not referring to your soul. It is referring to your physical being.
So soul means, you mean the ruh. But
yeah,
the ruh but in the Quran, ruh and nafs, as I think, is a different entity. Are they used interchangeably?
I think that you need to point to the verse. You see, we just cannot speak hypothetically. If you have any verse in mind, then I can comment.
Okay, I do. I'll look at it next time. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Noshad Shafqat, please go ahead. This will be our last question of the day. I know we have a few remaining chat questions that we didn't get to, so those have been saved until the next Ask Dr. Saleem session. Noshad, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam. Dr. Just want to clarify something which has come into my mind. with regard to the distinction between good and evil that God has ingrained within us human beings. Uh, we have that by birth. Isn't the incident of Cain and Abel, when Cain killed Abel and he then regretted doing that and he wanted to hide his corpse and he saw the crow doing that? Wouldn't that be one of the finest examples that right at the beginning of the creation of mankind, God has indicated to us that the element of good and evil, the distinction between the two, is ingrained within us human beings. Just your
Yes,
comment on that.
you're right about that, but I would say that I would suggest that if you could go one step earlier, and that is in the incident of Adam and Eve itself, when they started to cover themselves with leaves after having that personal encounter, that shows that they had this personal what you call shame and modesty ingrained in them. That is what made them cover themselves. So I think that even before this happened, even before Abel and Cain, the whole incident of Adam and Eve also suggests that this innate guidance is found in us.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have 4 more minutes and 1 more raised hand, so let's take the raised hand. MP Naveed Irfan, please go ahead. But please make your question very concise.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातहू डॉक्टर
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
डॉक्टर साहब मेरा सवाल है जो ज़कात के जो 5%, 10% और 20% जो ये है परसेंटेज है, तो हम तो सिर्फ 2.5% से वाकिफ थे, तो इसका सोर्स क्या है, मतलब ये किस तरह से पता चला है? कुछ रिवायत में है या
I have given a detailed talk on this subject, and I have explained how 5% and 10% has the basis or the origin of this percentage. Basically, they always existed in the times of the Prophet also. The only thing is that the 5% and the 10% were related to agricultural produce. So it's 2.5%, 5% and 10% and even 20%, which is on rakats or on treasures that are found. These percentages are found in established sunnah even in the times of the Prophet. See, the only thing is that we relegated, or we just confined the 5% and 10% to agriculture. And you must have heard the words of ushur and nisf ushur. So this is 5% and 10% actually, to put it in other words. The only thing that Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi has done in these times is that he has extrapolated. By analogy, he has said that, well, it's not just agricultural produce which can be regarded as produce. We have industrial produce, we have other forms of production, we have skilled production as well. So all that he has done is he has just extended the scope of production, which was confined as agricultural production in the times of the Prophet. So the first answer is that it's not just 5 and 10% that you should have heard of. It's found in our sources ever since the Prophet himself. But these percentages had been confined to production related to agriculture. So all that has happened is that a scholar of recent times has said that, well, today we have other forms of production besides agricultural production, and they also need to be classified in the same way. So basically, it's an ijtihad done through analogy. And if you'd like more details, I have given a very detailed talk on this topic, and our moderator can provide you that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Although our time is over, the questions are not. So I would like to request the participants to please keep their questions until the next Ask Dr. Saleem session, or they can join the Islamic studies session to again ask their questions at the end of these sessions. And we'll be ending our session here. Thank you very much.